Attorney General Bondi, you promised not to politicize your position. Those words from Senator Schiff launched what may be the most devastating oversight hearing in DOJ history. What you're about to see is Schiff systematically exposing how a $50,000 cash bribe to Tom Homan was covered up, how hundreds of prosecutors have quit in protest, and how Bondi's Justice Department has become Trump's personal weapon against his enemies. This isn't just political theater, it's democracy under assault.
What is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether he took the money?
All I know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
and,
was she?
Senator Schiff,
was she
if
right?
you worked for me, you would have been fired because you were censured by Congress for lying with your
We can stipulate to, you can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
Personal attacks? You've been attacking my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking.
But what we're interested in,
borders are.
What we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You were
asked by my colleague. You were asked by my colleague.
Attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Homan taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you support?
You don't have to tell me what is my decision and what is not my decision. I said you can talk to Director Patel.
You don't have to try to.
You think you've got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our borders are.
Excuse me.
Who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump for trying to impeach him?
I guess the answer is you won't support that request.
After you now know that Joe Biden tried to cover up Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine.
Let me do this, because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You were asked, a law degree,
excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire career.
You can attack me later, and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day to day.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be—
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair. I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing. of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now
What
the current
about the
president.
fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to
Senator
be,
Schiff?
this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about the
Are the
cover-up-
riots in
about
LA
the cover-up-
serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology
when will it be
your entire career,
that the
frankly.
members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a
personal,
failed lawyer
refuse to
because you don't
accept,
understand when
excuse
someone
me,
can and cannot
refuse
answer
to
a
accept
question.
personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander.
With
Will
that,
you
Madam
apologize
Chair,
to Donald
I yield
Trump
back.
for slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator Britt.
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction to the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce with unanimous consent the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the
still
president's
arguing,
enemies
or are you admitting
rather
Bondi,
than
Ms.
protecting the
Bondi,
country.
one moment.
May I have unanimous
Are you,
consent
are
to
you
enter
entering
these
that
into the record?
record without objection?
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Britt.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi.
What Senator Schiff accomplished in that hearing room was more than a confrontation. It was a surgical dissection of institutional capture. He didn't rely on grandstanding or partisan rhetoric. Instead, he methodically laid bare how the Justice Department has been transformed from an independent law enforcement agency into what he called President Trump's personal sword and shield. The $50,000 cash-in-a-bag allegation against Tom Homan isn't just about one official's potential corruption. It's about a pattern of behavior that strikes at the core of how justice is supposed to work. When Schiff pressed Bondi on whether Homan took the money, her evasions weren't just politically awkward, they were legally telling. An attorney general who cannot or will not address basic facts about bribery allegations against a senior administration official is signaling that accountability depends on political loyalty, not evidence. Schiff's methodical questioning exposed something more dangerous than individual misconduct: systematic obstruction of oversight. When he listed question after question that Bondi refused to answer, from the $400 million Qatari gift to career prosecutor firings to military strikes in the Caribbean, he was documenting institutional breakdown. Each non-answer represents a norm being shredded, a guardrail being removed. The exodus of hundreds of career prosecutors tells a story that transcends partisan politics. These are professionals who built their careers on following evidence wherever it leads, regardless of political consequences. When they resign en masse citing ethical concerns, It signals that the institution they served no longer operates by the principles that made it trustworthy. Schiff's reference to over 1,000 former federal prosecutors sounding alarms isn't hyperbole. It's a professional community in revolt against what they see as the weaponization of their life's work. When that many career professionals risk their reputations to speak out, it suggests institutional corruption at a scale that threatens the rule of law itself. The most chilling aspect wasn't what Bondi said, but what she consistently refused to say. Her inability to provide straight answers about basic oversight questions. Whether career ethics lawyers were consulted, whether prosecutors found insufficient evidence in certain cases, whether officials must follow court orders reveals an attorney general who views transparency as optional and accountability as political. Notice how she deflected to personal attacks when cornered, claiming Schiff was slandering officials by simply asking factual questions. This isn't legal strategy, it's authoritarian deflection designed to avoid accountability through intimidation. This hearing exposed the transformation of the Justice Department from an institution bound by law into one bound by loyalty. That's not just a bureaucratic problem, it's a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time, one evasive answer at a time.